Productions on the track.
What's up, everybody? This is Case Study QB, and we are the Political Junkies. I'm so excited to start this show today. We got our guest, Sabrina Vanti from the Sabby Sabs podcast. First that I've watched for a long time, and I do a lot of calling. I feel like I've gotten to know Sabby over all these call-in shows that I've been on, and I'm so happy. Let me give you the floor and introduce you. How you doing, Sabby?
Hey, Case. Thanks so much for having me on.
Awesome to have you. I got the usual political junkies. I got Kimberly here. I got Day. And I got David, and I'm looking forward to going through some of the clips, some of the Case Study QB clips of the week, and then we're going to discuss some topics. And then towards the end, I'm going to give a sneak peek of the Mutual Aid Party app that I'm hard at working on. Hopefully we'll be launching really soon. All right. So there's a lot to talk about this week. The first thing I want to talk about is it turns out that the Nevada DNC, which was controlled by the Democratic Socialists of America, they had their candidates that took over the DNC 2 years ago. Looks like there's some news on who took back power. I'll play that video right now.
Nevada Democrats over the weekend ousted a slate of Democratic Socialists who took over the state party 2 years ago, ending a troubled run marked by divisions and infighting. Joining us now is Nevada's Democratic Senator facing re-election in 2024, Jackie Rosen. Senator, thanks for your time this morning. I want to talk about your race ahead in just a moment, but explain for our viewers who may not fully understand the background happened over the weekend with the Democratic Party in Nevada. How significant was that?
Well, thank you for having me on this morning. And I want to tell you it was a historic win because now Chairwoman Danielle Monroe Moreno is the first Black woman to be chair of Nevada Dems. And with her unity slate, I believe we're going to bring everyone together. She won, and the whole slate won, an overwhelming victory to bring the focus back to Nevada Democrats, how we're investing in our state, how we're delivering for our constituents, for our businesses, for our veterans, and for our seniors. And we need to move forward. Nevada is a battleground state. It is purple. If you recall, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto won only by about 8,000 votes. So it is very competitive. I'm going to have a tough race. And with this new slate of unity, this new unity slate chaired by Chairwoman Danielle Monroe Moreno, we will have victory, I believe.
All right, so you don't have to play the whole thing, but just to give a refresher, this is an Intercept article from March 8th, 2021. The entire staff of the Nevada Democratic Party quits after Democratic Socialist slate won every seat. So, let me bring it over here. Sorry. So this is the article from the Intercept that talks about this. I think me personally, I think it's terrible that this happened. I'm really curious to see what was the story behind the scenes. So before I give some more of my feedback, let me go to Day here to give some commentary.
Yeah, so I would love to know that information. I apologize. I'm not well versed on it. But what I would like to point out is just the classic media bias. Like, you bring on somebody who isn't representative of the Dem Socialist Party, she immediately shifts to identity politics and uses the word unity without discussion of what they are actually united around. Surprising no one, it's corruption. And what I think bothers me the most is there was no pushback from the host when it came to the actions of the establishment Dem Party and their lack of unity when the Democratic Socialists actually had won. And so I found that lately, at least, I feel like in media, what I've been more attuned to is the way that they prime viewers to take their side by using words that they know are fluffy and they feel good. And for the average person, if you're not in tune with what's going on, you'll just take it on its face value. And so I found that to be really disgusting. And the worst part is they love to use this idea of we're a purple state, we're this, we're that. And it's like, well, all of that means nothing if your entire agenda is one, corruption and making yourself indistinguishable from the Republicans saying some cultural issues. The reason why it's so purple is because you all don't make a big enough contrast, especially when it comes to an economic populist message, to give people something to vote for. Because I'm old enough to remember when Bernie Sanders was able to win that state by a landslide, and then everyone told him that the state wasn't diverse enough, so he couldn't win. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah, just to give a little bit more background, that's when, like in the article said, that the previous DNC quit when the Democratic Socialists of America was coming in. They also took all the money out of the coffers of the DNC. Then the AOC and Bernie Sanders had to send out emails to say, hey, can you help them send some money? And they were able to replenish, I think like 200,000 or around 300,000 and replenish their coffers. And then I remember Jordan Sheridan interviewed, I believe it was the DNC chair that took over that used to be part of the Democratic Socialists, and she basically was talking about how the current establishment Democrats shunned them. So imagine, this is supposed to be a democratic organization that if the people's votes counted, they would adhere to the people, and then they would come in and work with the new DNC, but they totally shunned them. And this was also blessed by Biden to shun them as well. And it looked like maybe they just, I'm really curious to find out what happened over the 2 years and what was the result of this. But it could have been that they just totally made sure that they were in, didn't have anything to do with anything. And that's what caused them to just get out of the situation. So, I don't know if anybody else want to chat, mention this. What you think, Sabby? Let me go to you.
I think the DNC did what they usually do. They back corporate interests. So that's why Joe Biden co-signed on this. I think it was really scary for them to see Bernie Sanders win that state the way that he did, even though it was a primary still, the way that he really won Nevada during that Democratic primary in 2020. And then to see other Dem socialists also win seats locally, I think this was a way for them to push back on that. But this is the problem, though, when you have like these political parties, they're controlled by big money interest. So this is why I always stress to people, you have to get corporate money out of electoral politics. And that's the thing. Otherwise, these parties are just going to answer to like their donors. Same thing happened in California, or a similar situation happened in California with CalCare. They actually had all the votes to pass CalCare, which would have been single payer healthcare in California. Big money interest came in and they decided not even to vote on it. So I think we have to address the money issue in electoral politics.
We can't hear you, Case. While he's doing that, Kimberly, if you had something you wanted to say, you're on mute right now. But
yeah, I was just gonna say that, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Everything that I was hearing about what was going on in Nevada was that after the DSA won all these seats, basically the new chair, which was Judith Whitmer, wasn't really moving towards reform. Essentially, she was kind of just working with the corporate Democrats and kind of backing away from what were previously held beliefs, which is why she didn't get much support this time around, because a lot of DSA members just kind of pulled out of the whole situation. So that's kind of why they were crushed in that way. And I think this just goes to show what the game plan has always been with the establishment. The establishment has never, it's not in their plans to work with the left. The only way they want to work with the left is if the left is under them as a junior partner. The moment you take over power, what did these people do? They immediately exited the organization, created a new organization, brought all that money from, you know, the DNC in Nevada into the new organization and immediately ran opposition. I just don't understand why leftists don't understand that picture. There's never going to be no unity around corporatists. They don't want unity with you. You're just too scared to do what they do, which is start your own shit and run opposition.
yeah, David, was that all for you, Kimberly? David, did you have anything?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been really interesting to see how the current one Denver City Council woman, Candy Sadabaka, who's endorsed by the Denver Democratic Socialists and identifies as a Democratic Socialist, has been the receiver of many of a lot of corporate opposition. She's up for re-election this year too, and it's been very interesting to see the corporate-backed money also going against her in the campaign. But what I think is really neat is that this year, I know I've talked about it on previous shows about how this is the first year that Denver has had public funding of elections, and the city is matching donations of less than $50, 9-1. So like if someone contributes $10, the city will throw in $90 from their public elections fund for a $100 donation. And it's supposed to be to level the playing field. And so I was like, I don't know if Nevada has anything like that, but I was like, I would love to see that expanded elsewhere in order to level the playing field so that people aren't having to be reliant as much on the national committees for funding.
Oh, I don't think we can hear you.
I forgot I muted myself. Just kidding. I was saying what I love that there's this connect through line between all of us talking about whether it's the money, whether it's the actual committee being corrupt itself, and then even Kimberly when it comes to the power. Because something that you made me think of, Kimberly, is really the fact that when progressives or Dem socialists, whatever they identify, leftists, when we get power, we don't have the luxury of slowly turning the wheel. When we get power, like when Nevada got in power, the goal was not to, yes, they can extend an olive branch for the establishment to get on board, but it's not slow your agenda for them. Because at the end of the day, if you don't deliver in those 2 years, they will never, ever let you live down that face. See what happens when you put these people in charge? They don't do this, they don't do that. And it's like they needed to go, excuse my French, balls to the wall and really show people this is how we're getting it done. And while also messaging all these things that we're getting for you, those people, they did not want that for you. Because I think what I loved, I think might have been you, Sabrina, brought up was about the money that they were able to get from people like Bernie Sanders and AOC, which shows me that if we had some sense of unity and some sense of collaboration, we are not dependent on the DNC. There's case the way that, if we don't have the luxury of these big corporate. Oh, this is like scary because now he's like on two things. But Case, can you hear us? Can you hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me
There we
now?
go. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead, take
So
it
I think
over.
I'm coming through the computer. So now I want to see if for some reason my videos still work. It'll be interesting to see if this works or not. So just give me one moment to see if I could bring up this. Boom. I wanted to bring up Amani's student loan.
Yes.
All right.
Establishment Dem math.
Can you hear that?
Student loan forgiveness is the
All right.
greatest thing on the planet.
All right, I'm going to start it over. And unfortunately, I think this is how we have to work just for now.
All right.
According to Establishment Dem math, Biden's student loan forgiveness is the greatest thing on the planet. And I have my doubts. So to fix this problem, I gave a nice call to the people that service our student loans. Mohila. Let's see how that went.
Thank you for calling Mohila. My name's
Yeah, so I had a question. Apparently I was one of the people who was approved for the $20K loan forgiveness from Biden, but I know that that's, still being litigated in court. But I had a question about, if the court approves it and I do get that $20K forgiven, I would still have loans left over. So my question would be, what would be the percentage of interest on those loans that are left over?
well, I will tell you that the discharge would go directly to interest. So if you get the full $20,000, it would only reduce your interest by $20,000, which means that your principal balance is the same.
Aha! As I suspected, this policy is nothing to write home about. Let me break down why. First, let's start.
So she basically goes into talking about how interest rates gets added on top of the original loan, which causes you to repay back that loan a lot longer than was expected. And then also the plan that Biden has for quote unquote forgive student loans is basically just to target $10,000 worth of that interest. So almost guaranteeing you that you're going to continue having your regular loan and continue to pay interest. So before I go to someone that's on our panel, I just want to give a shout out, because that's what I was going to do before I got muted or whatever. Give a shout out to everybody in the chat. We got Angela Sangster, Jermon, we got Miguel H, we got Cheryl Patrick, Lamb the Man is in the building, Masterman Hour. We got Bryce Smith, and I know Holly Horn was in there, Paul Patrick, Steve, and hopefully Alibero is also in the chat. So much love to everybody. So anyone want to jump in on this?
I will. I'll take a stab at this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is something, I did try to warn people about last year. And I think the response was I was just being pessimistic, but I knew a lot about this. I worked in higher ed for over 10 years. I was an academic advisor. I also worked in the finance department in higher education. I knew a lot about student loans. So I've looked into a lot of this, and I tried to warn people that the $10,000 or the $20,000, depending on which one you qualify for, it was going to go to interest first. Now, for some people, that may not be a problem for them. Like if you only owe, let's say like maybe $4,000 left of student loan debt, no one I know owes just that little. But if you do, then for you, then you're probably going to be good. But most people I know owe more than $10,000 or $20,000. So what's going to happen is when you get that approval for, let's go with the 10,000, that's going to go to pay the interest first. So you're still going to have that loan that you have to pay for. And I tried to warn people about that like this was not done the right way. That's why I said they should have just canceled all of it. That was the right way to do it. And it shouldn't have been done through the HEROES Act, because that was established during the pandemic under a state of emergency. It should have been done using the Higher Education Act of 1965. This was all laid out for Joe Biden in 2021 by Ayanna Pressley, Chuck Schumer, and Elizabeth Warren. This was all detailed. So now we are in like this means-tested, tangled web, and I really hate to see what's going to happen. So even if the Supreme Court does decide to go along with the cancellation, which I don't know if that's going to happen, to be honest with you, we have a conservative-leaning Supreme Court. I still don't think this is going to be the win that a lot of student loan borrowers thinks that it's going to be. And people are just going to be upset again, and they're going to feel like they were duped.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Let me go to Day on this one.
To me, this is just a classic example of why I call him bare minimum Biden. Because at the end of the day, I love what you said at the end, Sabrina. When the voters find out what happens, then they're going to be more pissed off than they were about the judges in Supreme Court. Because at the end of the day, continuing off what you said, I can't say what's in Biden's heart. But to me, if a month before the midterms, you tell everybody I'm about to cancel $10,000 of student debt, first of all, nobody thinks the interest. Oh my God, he's paying the interest. You know what that means. Just like when you said $2,000 checks but gave people $1,400. But what's really insidious is that you announce that, and then the same week that you halt on a red wave, you tell people, oh, I'm so sorry, there's an injunction with the judges. And it's like, no, had you gone the proper routes, one with the Higher Education Act, and more importantly, had you canceled the debt first and then announced it, you would have not given them the time to set up an injunction. To me, I can't speak to your intentions, but I can tell you it looks like optics wise is it's insidious, and that you had no intention of doing this. And even worse is that what you are doing is essentially a giveaway to these student debt loan people. And at the end of the day, this is a number that they agreed upon. It's some number you pulled out your butt crack because they said, oh, that's just interest. Sure, pay that. And to me, this is what I'm talking about when I say he's status quo Joe. It's because he gives you just enough to think he cares, But when you get into the weeds, I've learned that the Dems are more interested in tally mark wins than they are about the substance underneath it. And until we start exposing that and people start to just question, oh, he said $10,000. Well, what's the fine print say? That's what the first response should be, because until that's the case, people will consistently give him more credit than he's due.
Kimberly, what you think?
Yeah, I wanted to get back to Sabrina's point about folks saying that she was being too pessimistic, because I definitely have an issue with that. And I've seen it on Twitter quite a bit. And it's just like, is it being pessimistic or using your brain? I mean, this is the guy who, the reason people even have loans is because of his bankruptcy bill. I mean, he's basically, loading up Americans with debt has been his whole situation for a long time in Congress. And even as a senator. So it just doesn't make sense for folks to say you're being pessimistic when all you're doing is looking at the history of this politician and making a smart, projection. And this, a lot of times I've seen this come from folks on the left. I'm just like, can we stop being duped? Because at one point, is it that, are you just too dumb to understand what's going on? Because I consistently see this whole thing of like, we can't, impugn people's intentions and we can't go too far in being pessimistic. Like, we need to take a win when it's a win. And it's like, these aren't wins. And I really question people on the left who are trying to sell this type of stuff as a win. And remember, this is the type of stuff that was going on under the Obama administration, where people would constantly try to sell losses as wins. And then we promptly got Trump.
100%. David.
Yeah, Sabrina, I was also an academic advisor, funnily enough. Yes. And so, and what was really interesting is when I was an academic advisor, I worked primarily with recipients of a specific scholarship foundation, who the scholarship foundation basically, and it was at a private university. And so the scholarship foundation footed the bill for the remainder of tuition fees that the university didn't cover in the form of scholarships, which is basically a coupon, if you will. And what was so interesting is so many of my colleagues always talked about, oh, the purpose of these retention programs is so that it's creating these holistic developmental opportunities for students. No, it's not. These retention programs were to keep these students there so the colleges and universities could have more of an income source, a guaranteed income source. These universities, even though they have nonprofit tax status, like nonprofit is a tax status, it is not a business model. And many of these nonprofits, they're not charities. And so when I think about how the way that these colleges and universities are structured, it's in order to receive additional money from these other places, so that they can keep their doors open too. I also am curious, now that I work in like tax and accounting, I'm also curious how this will screw over the working class and the middle class, who will no longer be able, well, if they're forgiving the student loan interest, how that's going to impact the student loan interest deduction that people can take. And that also affects their tax refunds. And so I don't know, but I'm curious if it will.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually, because you could really get, if you're expecting every year you're getting $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 back, and then you get that forgiveness, you're still expecting, okay, my tax money's coming that I can pay off my credit card bill or such and such, and then they could take all that, like, oh, we consider that income or something like that, right? So yeah. All right, we're going to move on to the next topic. Oh, I think Day wants to ask. Can I ask? Go ahead, Day.
I just had a quick question. I think I'm following it correctly, but I want to clarify, and you both have experience in this. So essentially, if Biden had lowered, if this $10,000 or $20,000 was going to be applied to the principal, what would have happened is it would have resulted in a lower interest payment or lower required interest payment to the student loan people, which is, I'm assuming that's how they make their profit, because it's essentially all it is. And so is that correct? Like, that's why it has to go to interest first, because they don't want it to touch the principal, which makes their interest payment lower?
Right. Like it's like, I know one of the things that they did say in reference to this is that people are not going to have increased interest during this period, but we already have so much interest from from years before. So it's just, again, this was another way to still benefit the banks because the student loan companies and the banks are connected. So they're both going to make a profit here. So it's a profit for the university and it's still a profit for the banks. So they weren't going to, that's why he wouldn't wipe it all the way completely out too, I believe.
Gotcha. Because the reason I say that is because like I'm very blessed and privileged to be in a position where I don't have any student loan left. But like to me, this is a great example to highlight how any policy that's proposed that is championed by these big corporations is not actually a threat to their power. Like the fact that they were like, oh, these people, they even the student loan people are on board with $10,000. Now it's like, this is why. But no one in mainstream media, I should say, takes that additional step. So even when you said what you said, Kimberly, and I agree, like, yes, people's immediate reaction is to be pessimistic and things like that. Honestly, sometimes you can tell the difference. I don't think a lot of it is in bad faith. It's because no one's taking that extra step, and most people aren't in the trenches like us or that interested to really expose, like, you're right, $10,000, but let me break it down for you. And I really think we're not strangers to, of course, this is intentional, but it really, really angers me because David and I have been posting different clips on our social media stuff. And that was the first thing somebody messaged me back with this long paragraph. This isn't Biden's fault and blah, 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 blah. And I said, I'm not going to give a snarky response. I actually broke it down. And he was like, oh, well, I didn't know that part. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next topic. We're going to bring in that Mehdi Hassan video on
I haven't seen this.
On Palestine. I'll play the video here.
A pogrom. That was the word used by an Israeli general, not some Palestinian activist, not some hoity-toity human rights group, not some pinko pundit. Yes, the Israeli general in charge of troops in the occupied West Bank used the word pogrom to describe a violent, rampaging mob of Israeli settlers that tore through the West Bank town of Huwara this week. Dozens of Palestinians were wounded, scores of houses and cars were set ablaze, and at least one person, 37-year-old Sameh Oktash, was killed in the chaos. The frenzied horde, it's been reported, took to the streets after the killing of two Israeli brothers, Hillel and Yagel Yaniv, who were reportedly shot by a Palestinian gunman last week. Now, normally this would be precisely the type of situation where politicians would step in with calm words to quell tensions and stop the cycle of violence. But that's not what happened. Nope. First, last Sunday, Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich liked a tweet online calling for Huwara to be, quote, wiped off the map. And then at a press conference on Wednesday, Smotrich doubled down, openly declaring, quote, I think the village of Huwara needs to be wiped out. I think the state of Israel should do it. It's worth noting that Smotrich shortly thereafter walked back those remarks, calling them a, quote, emotional slip of the tongue. And in fairness, who among us hasn't accidentally threatened genocide in the past?
So I just want to play that part. I think we got the gist of it for the most part. It's totally unfortunate and sad. A pogrom is what they called it. Sounds like a raid or just basically genocide or a race war, which is exactly what's going on. Unfortunately, it's really uneven-handed, where one side has a lot of power. I mean, their democracy, Israel, a lot of Israeli ministers just control the whole, what if they call it Congress or government, and it, to me, is just totally suppressing the people, the Palestinian people. So let me go to you guys before I give any more commentary. Go ahead, Dave.
I mean, I don't feel capable of speaking on all solutions and misspeaking because this is not my expertise. But what I can say is, at this point, I don't care what your proposed solution for Israel-Palestine is. If you can look at stuff like this and still not be able to call out the Israeli government and the Netanyahu administration for what they're doing, I never want to hear you utter out of your lips that you're a humanitarian. I'm sorry. Like there's an immediate course of action that should be happening when we are funding genocide. And I know we're doing it in other places like Saudi Arabia and Yemen, but to simply oh, this sucks, I hate that they're doing it, and not realizing that you are directly contributing to their ability to do it and leaving the Palestinians defenseless, how can you honestly get in our face and whine to me about, and I don't want to say whine, I don't want to be taken out of context, about what Putin is doing to Ukraine. You can't be serious. There's a lack of ideological consistency. If you can watch what Israel is doing to a sovereign place, what they're doing to the Palestinians, I should say an ethnic group because it's a little bit different, and then cry about how abhorrent and how horrible Putin is. And listen, I'm not out here championing or simping for that man, but you're not consistent. And it really pisses me off that we created an ecosystem here media-wise where you can't critique a government in fear of being called anti-Semitic, when that in and of itself is condescending and racist, because essentially what you're doing is saying that there is no dissent within the Jewish people to what their government is doing under the guise of their name, quote unquote. It's just really sad to me.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'd be really curious. God forbid the Israeli government actually followed through with this. Like, with the US being the biggest funder of the Israeli military, like, does that mean that the US is signing off on this as well? And then, like, what is our purpose in having these negotiations toward peace? And I'm like, we need to figure out a way where peace is profitable, because that seems to be the only way to get buy-in from this system that we're in. There's money and misery, and continuing to fund the military-industrial complex, whether it's our own or the Israelis, is leading to increased suffering around the world.
Yeah, 100%. I think I heard, and they're going to talk about it later in the clip, that Bernie Sanders is trying to make it contingent upon the money, the aid that we do give Israel, the way they treat the Palestinians. And I know giving foreign aid is definitely a hot button issue, but if you're going to give it, at least try to alleviate some pain that's in it. Now, will it happen? I doubt it. We'll see. What Bernie Sanders, being a Jewish man himself, probably has the best chance of trying to make something happen, but we'll see what happens. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, I would say on this issue of like making peace profitable, I don't think these very rich individuals care about what's profitable. They care about what's profitable to them. So, for example, we know that investing in things like education is profitable for the society, but is it profitable for the people who are sitting at the top of the pyramid?
That's a good point.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, it's almost as if I wish that there was the same way there's the military-industrial complex. Where is the teachers' industrial complex that advocates on behalf of teachers to give all this money to the teachers to help them do their job? Or even an infrastructure industrial complex, which works to make high-speed rail, makes the roads, makes all the things that actually benefit us, the people. But for some reason, they do not exist, and they just keep suppressing the people. What you think, Sabby?
I was going to add, I know people here in the U.S. that are actually from Palestine and they cannot return home. So I think some people may not understand, like, this is a serious issue. So like, even like someone like Rashida Tlaib cannot go back to Palestine. The people are obviously being pushed out. Israel, or the state of Israel, is basically creating an apartheid state. And I think that it's also important for people to know it's not just the Palestinians. There are also Ethiopian Jews that are in Israel that are also being pushed out and taunted, beaten up, just like the Palestinians are. Mint Press News, they've done really good coverage on this on the ground. But some of the videos, like, I could not play on here just because they're really brutal. But it's not just about the Palestinians. And I think a lot of times when mainstream media, when they talk about this, they totally leave out the fact that you have people who who are Ethiopians, who are Jews. They're Ethiopian Jews, and they don't want them there either. So it's just, there's a lot of money that's involved in this. And our government has always, for the most part, as long as I can remember, has backed the Israeli government. Now, this is not to say that the people from there are problematic per se. It's the government that is the issue. And I think that you're right about, I forget who said it about the hypocrisy. You're absolutely right. How can people care so much about the people in Ukraine, but not care about the Palestinians in reference to the Israel-Palestine conflict?
Yeah, 100%. All right, we're going to move on to the next topic. And this is a topic where there might be some bipartisanship on breaking up big ag, otherwise known as big agriculture.
I just want to say it's time to think about breaking up big ag. I think this could unite the right and the left. This is atrocious, and there have been so many horrible labor incidents in the meatpacking industry through COVID, and then now this. How did this come to light at first? Did teachers notice? Because some of these children were going to school during the day and then going at night and working these horrible jobs.
You know, the heartbreaking thing is how long there were signs, but how long it took for anything to happen. So even going back to 2016, there were teachers who reported a little girl coming to school with burns on her arms. They thought it might be child abuse. It was from the chemicals, from cleaning these plants at night. Children were falling asleep in class. School officials told the labor department, it's common knowledge. These kids are coming from the plant to the local middle school. This is in Nebraska.
All right, so we got a couple clips that we're going to be on this topic for a little while, but I just wanted to go to our super chat. Roger Meadows, much love to you. He said, you making me go on this corporate algorithm with no rock fan, which is a co-op, man. Anyway, you can't be anti-Semitic since Palestinians are Semites too. So that's what he said. I want to give a shout out to Oz the Boomer also, who gave a super sticker. Thank you so much. All right, so I played this first clip just to show that the woman speaking there at the very beginning, she's a Republican herself. She worked in the Bush administration. And then I have another clip that I want to bring up, and I'm going to set this up by playing it from the beginning. All right.
Disturbing reports of child labor in slaughterhouses and companies across the United States has sparked a widespread crackdown by the Biden administration. Federal authorities are trying to figure out how children from Central America, some as young as 12 and 13 years old, ended up working potentially dangerous jobs. Investigators say children have been seen working in punishing conditions, such as cleaning blood and animal parts off the floors of meat packing plants at night and going to school by day if they can even go to school. The Labor Department has reported a 69% increase in child labor violations since 2018.
I just want to pause it on that real quick. This thing, I clipped this and posted this. This is absolutely amazing, and not in a good way. 3,800 children working in violation of this federal law. 69% increase since 2018. 835 companies illegally employing minors last year. 600 labor investigations ongoing. I'm going to make this point soon coming up about the Department of Labor. So you know how we have Pete Buttigieg as the Department of Transportation Secretary, and the laxness, if that's a word, or the incompetent way that he's running that department when it comes to airline travel. I mean, this is the first time, I don't know about y'all, I've never heard of airlines coming so close that they're colliding on their tarmac before Pete Buttigieg. I mean, and I just clipped the other day, it was a fifth incident that happened within 2 months. So that just, and then not even to mention the derailment that's going on. And he said casually, oh yeah, we got thousands of these a year. Oh yeah, duh, come on, you know. So there is a Department of Transportation Secretary that's doing a poor job. And then here in this situation, we see a Department of Labor Secretary or department not doing a good job. And I'm going to show a clip coming up. But I think I've played enough clips. I've talked enough. Let me go to my panel. If anybody want to jump in. Yeah, let me go to you, Dave.
This is I wish I liked cursing in public because I just want to be flipping for real. Like, I think what's actually disgusted me the most, like, it should be a no-brainer that like making children work like is abhorrent. But what I found more interesting, and I will say my personal radical take is that I actually don't want kids to have to work before the age of 18. I feel like most children who do this are actually doing it due to whether it be economic deprivation with their families and they needing to support themselves. I wish that children could actually take the time to focus on their education and be students. Being a student can be and should be a full-time job with them, because my belief is our upfront investment in our children through their development and their education is what's going to set us up for economic and just societal success in the future. But unfortunately, we're so invested in just making children better cogs for the machine that becomes irrelevant. And I would be fine with creating some UBI for kids when they're 16, something to get them that's sustainable, like a federal allowance. I don't care. I know that's a little controversial maybe for some people, but beyond that, I've seen some libertarians out here saying, well, I don't see the issue with the kids doing it if the parents co-sign it and say that it's okay. And to me, I look at it like, what kind of world this is what I'm talking about. When we have made profit, when we have made corporations the be all end all, we are literally on our way to hell in a handcart, because these children, David loves to say, like, people say, oh, nobody wants to work anymore. And he's like, you're right. We don't just want to toil and do things for the sake of doing it. People want jobs or things that give them purpose and meaning. I'm sorry. A 12-year-old working to burn themselves is not learning anything but how to be fearful about the world they're graduating into. And that's it.
They talked about how kids was like not getting any sleep. And I'm going to go to Sabby next, but I saw a great point by Paul Patrick, who said, how does ICE find illegals, but can't these corrupt corporations?
Come on.
Here it is. Let me go to you, Sabby.
Yeah, this is really interesting because we hear about these stories happening in other countries, but then to hear about it happening right here in the United States, it can be pretty wild, I think. What's weird to me is, where were the parents? Like, the parents signed off on this. They were okay. Did they not know the kids were working? I think that's the question that I have. Like, whose parents would be okay with this happening? I mean, there's a reason why we have like a legal age here in this country when you can legally start working. It's really sad. I think that kids should be able to be kids. But also, I did notice that Marty Walsh, who's the Secretary of Labor, he recently stepped down. So it's interesting. This is coming out right after that.
Yeah, so we're going to see. That's interesting. We're going to see how the new person is, I believe, an Asian, and they're celebrating her as the highest level Asian in government. But we need to celebrate having zero child laborers in America. That's what we need to celebrate. So to your point also, Sabby, I'm going to play this final clip, and it might answer a little bit of your question.
Actually came in, but there were no.
Play it over.
The Department of Labor eventually came in, but there were no charges for JBS and only a fine for the contractor that had brought these kids in. Meanwhile, some of the kids' parents were charged. And I think there's a lot of focus right now on the way that child labor laws are enforced and whether there's enough accountability for these large companies that are really benefiting directly from this kind of child labor.
So you see how they go after the most vulnerable of all those people. You had the big corporation, JBS, and I'm about to show their website. Then you have the contractors, which JBS is using the contractors as that middleman so that they cannot be held directly liable. And they only give them a fine. And then they charge the parents, who obviously are the most vulnerable in this situation. Trust me, there's no rich people having their children working at these jobs late at night. So I want to play the website. Let me see if I can bring it up. Boom. This is the JBS Foods. Now, look how, this website looks nice. Smiling people. Got a nice video. Showing the meat, showing the food. Feed your family. Oh, ain't that nice? Every meal should help us achieve a better tomorrow. And here's an example of a story. Now, here's something that I pointed out coming up next. Oh, net zero. They're also green. This company is green. Right? Here, this is what I want to point out. Politico sowing the seeds for a better tomorrow. Oh, interesting. Politico did an article on this. So let me click through.
A few days ago.
Just a few days ago. How? What a coincidence.
They have been showing their corporate bona fides a lot lately.
Yeah, this is not the first time, right? That happened. Okay, that website is taking a while to load. Let me see if I have it already saved. Here we go. Boom. So this is what I clipped out. Sowing the seeds for a better tomorrow. This is a Politico article. I copied this from Politico's website. They did an article on what is it? JBS Foods. But look at this. Sponsored. Let me see if I can blow it up a little bit more. Ooh, blow it up too much.
We can see it.
But
yeah.
basically it says sponsored by JBS Foods USA. So here JBS is paying for Politico to do a puff piece on their company in light of, I'm sure it's after they found out about this reporting and it's starting to get big and starting to expose them. They're like, oh, let's see if we could get some backup from our mainstream media cohorts.
Politico's a public relations firm now. I got
that
it.
Right.
It's amazing.
Pretty much. All right. Let me see if there's anybody in the chat. I want to go to
this actually.
But Kimberly, what you think about this?
I think David was before me.
Oh, sorry about that. David.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say I think what's startling to me is that like that the first clip that you showed said that there were 3,800 children working, and these are the ones that we know about. So I'd be curious to know what the actual number is, and then how it also talked about how many of these folks were from Central America, and so I was like, not only are many of the Central Americans fleeing as refugees up to here, and now we're putting them through awful conditions as well. I'd be curious as well how many of the parents also work in the meat processing facilities, knowing how much these meat processing plants rely on immigrant and refugee labor or undocumented labor. Yeah,
go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, I've seen many arguments around this. And one of the things I've seen is people like, well, when I was 14, I worked at a lemonade stand. And it's like, listen, friends, working at a lemonade stand that you created is not the same thing as working within a factory where you can get your head chopped off. I mean, that is two completely different things. But to Dave's point, I don't really think that children should be working at all. I mean, even when we talk about the lemonade stand kids, right? Why do people even do this? It's because their parents don't have enough money to give them an allowance. Mm-hmm. Technically, this child would be doing chores for a little bit of money, but because the parents themselves are, in poverty, that's not a thing for them. All right. No child is honestly trying to work. They just need a couple of dollars to, go to the corner store, buy some chips and things of that sort. But they know their parents can't provide this. And, to the extent of why do parents, allow such a thing? I mean, I just think the pressure of like economic burden is a really big thing. It's one thing to say you're against like child exploitation, you don't want your child to be exploited, but it's also another thing of if your child doesn't work, you might not make the rent this month. And that is the kind of conditions that people are under. And it's interesting to me that they would go ahead and charge the parents, but they would, give the corporations a kind of a slap on the wrist. I don't think that we're going to see this problem truly go away, because I think when you formulate a society all around profit, which is what capitalism is, you're bound to have child exploitation. There's just no way you can get away from that. You're building a system that's completely about profit, how much money can we make? And if you can, a lot of these kids are also underpaid, right? So they're not even getting a regular wage. They're, getting wages under what is legally acceptable. And I mean, the minimum wage in most places, I mean, all places, I don't know of a state right now that has a minimum wage that can actually compare to the living cost in that state. So, I mean, I think this problem is probably bigger than what these figures are showing, because for years I've heard that our entire, meat packing industry relies on not only kids, but, undocumented people. There were just a couple stories out maybe a couple years ago talking about how, when some of these undocumented workers would complain, the company themselves would call ICE on them.
Oh, wow. I think that sounds familiar. And I remember also the meat inspectors, as it's coming down it's coming down a trail, they would be inspecting the meat. And what they've done, I believe it was under the Bush administration, but I could be wrong, that they made the regulation because there was a certain amount of time that the belt, that's what I was looking for, would bring down the meat for the inspectors to go through it. And they made the regulation so that the belt could go faster, which means that the inspectors were less efficient. So another thing is they would clean the meat with ammonia. So imagine cleaning your meat with almost like Clorox before putting it into the packages. So these inhumane ways of meat packing and meat packages just definitely need to be reconfigured. I totally agree that we need to break up big agriculture, bring it back to the family farms, because a lot of times they have personal, it sounds weird, but they have personal relationships with the different pigs, and they're more connected to the cows, and they make sure that they can graze properly instead of being inside a little cage that they're there, and they really appreciate it, almost like how the Indians used to use every part of an animal, the carcass, the skin. They used to really, even though they knew they were killing that animal, they still had a lot of respect for the animal, that they would use every single part of that animal. All right. Sabby, last word on this topic.
I would just say that it really speaks to the poverty issue that we have in this country. If it's such dire strengths, like I did see earlier this morning about the SNAP benefits are also being pulled back
That's
or either
next,
decreased.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there was a mom, she was on local news, and she was trying to figure out how she was going to be able to pay for groceries going forward. So I think it speaks to the poverty issue. And I feel like a lot of these capitalist organizations, they prey on those who they know really need the money.
Yeah. So Sabrina brought us right into our final story. We're going to talk about the SNAP benefits. Now, this is interesting. I saw this clip from Charles Payne, and he mentioned how no progressives have talked about it. So let me play the clip, and we'll get right to it.
End of the week. I know it's a real busy news cycle, and maybe the progressives were going to get around to saying something, but, well, there wasn't anything. At least I haven't seen anything. I mean, I hadn't seen Randy Weingarten go ballistic. AOC hasn't mentioned racial injustice, and I still haven't seen President Biden even try to blame it on evil Republicans, like the MAGA crowds. I'm talking about the now 44 million Americans that once received between $100 to $200 extra a month in food stamps, right? When the pandemic began, it's all phased out over the last month or so. And it's a bad time, obviously, with high food inflation. Now, maybe not much attention was paid to it because this extra help began under the prior administration. I guess, of course, there's a lot of political strategists out there also who said, listen, ignore the story, because if you bring it up, people are going to wonder why this is starting to happen. And also, there's the 5 largest states that this is happening to, the most expensive states in America, where it's already tough to be poor. Now you're going to have far less food stamps as well. So I don't know, maybe over the weekend we'll hear something about it. Listen, we want to be in a country where people are only on food stamps for a temporary period of time. We don't like cradle to grave, but certainly when they need the help, maybe they should get the help. That's what I've been told. Yeah. All right, Liz, over to you.
Wow, this is Fox Business talking about people should get food stamp and not hearing it from any progressive, Pamela Jayapal, AOC, anybody. So it just happened. This happened on the third. I have it here, the third, and then look what we find out that happened on the fourth. Boom.
A month across the country, 32 million people are going to be pushed onto this hunger cliff. And we know that hunger is already so much worse than it was even pre-pandemic. So this is a horrific thing. Republicans, by the way, in the House are proposing cutting SNAP even further, supposedly to take care of the deficit, when we know that we could raise taxes, as President Biden has proposed, on the wealthiest billionaires and get in enormous amounts of money that would far outweigh anything we would get by cutting these essential benefits to families.
Let me get your thoughts as well on.
So I don't know. I like to speculate and say, hey, she probably saw that segment and was like, oh, we got to get out here. We can't make Charles Payne or Fox Business make us look bad. So they got out there and got on board. So before anybody, if anybody has any last thing to say about this, then we're going to keep it moving. Now, let me go to David first.
Yeah, what I think is really interesting is that the party of the working people, the Democrats, are not only winding down these SNAP benefits, but they're also like winding down, kicking millions of people off of Medicaid. And so I was like, this is obscene that not only now are people not going to be able to afford some healthy groceries, which you already can't buy a whole lot with the existing SNAP program. Yeah, it was like now it's like, okay, you only have to get you can only get cheaper food now. And then who's producing that? And then you think about, we talked about animal factory farms earlier too, let alone Monsanto and all of that whole mess. I can't help but think that this is all intentional and all intertwined, trying to keep us poor, trying to keep us sick, and to keep us exhausted from working all the time.
100%. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, I think this has always been the issue with the progressive Democrats, is that, they're thinking a lot about, well, we don't want to say anything or do anything that's going to make Biden look bad or the Democrats look bad as a whole, because, we have the presidential elections coming in along with Congress elections and things of that sort. But, I always go back to a question of is your job as a progressive to defend bad actors when they're doing bad things, or is it to get the public the benefits that you've ran on? Because I just, I definitely understand some of the points of we don't want Republicans to get power because they're worse and all this other type of stuff. But it's listen, folks, Republicans and Democrats have been working together to destroy the American standard of life for decades now. All right. There's a reason why Democrats have been running on lowering prescription drugs for 80 years, and they've managed to maybe lower, the cost of 40 drugs. OK, 40 drugs. That's a minuscule amount of the pharmaceutical industry. And at this point, it's not about being, again, pessimistic. It's about just seeing the facts. These people only know bipartisanship when it comes to giving rich people money, when it comes to lowering benefits for everyday people. They don't want to do any bipartisanship on things that, would benefit the public. And that has always been the way it has gone. So at this point, I'm less worried about protecting Democrats. And guess what? If Democrats get wiped out, whose fault is it? People always say it's the fault of the voters for not understanding that Democrats are better than Republicans. But if you continuously elect a party that can never get their demands done, I mean, why does that party necessarily need to be rewarded consistently? Maybe what needs to happen is the middle needs to fall away.
100%. Let me just give a quick shout out to Roger Matos, the $2 super chat. Pushing the live federal government needs taxes to pay down debt. I know Roger knows about public banking and MMT, all that good stuff. Let me go to Sabby Sabs, and then we're going to go to, real quick, the website. I'm going to show that a sneak peek, and then we're going to end the show. Go ahead, Sabby.
Well, one, I want to say that the only reason Fox is even speaking out against this is because the president that's in power right now is a Democrat. If it was Trump that was in power right now, they wouldn't be speaking out against this. So I just want to be very clear about that. And then two, when Pramila Jayapal goes on to say we have to increase the taxes, or we can increase the taxes in order to, continue this, they're just making things more difficult and complicated than they already are. And the thing is, what Roger was referring to is MMT. All they have to do is the federal government can print more money into existence, which the federal government has already done before. And then you don't have to worry about increasing people's taxes. But none of the politicians in DC tell people about this. They don't tell people about MMT because they don't want them to know that they actually do have the power to do that. So I think that the thing is that when we look at people having reduction in SNAP benefits, like oftentimes I have to sit back and wonder, what are they really trying to do? Are they trying to decrease the population? And sometimes I think that they are. I think they want people who are poor to die. And I think they want people who are working class to be at that brink. And I think that's what we need to be paying attention to, because at the end of the day, even if it's Republican or Democrat, there are people at the top that control both parties, and they don't really care what party we belong to. They just want the money to stay at the top. So I think it's important for us to look at this in reference to up versus down, or top versus bottom, instead of left versus right.
Yep. 100%. I think they think of it like as natural selection. Like if you're poor enough and you don't have quote unquote ambition to get a great job and to go through college to make as much money as me, then you don't even deserve to live. You should starve. I think that's what these people think, and that's why this is one of my slogans right here. It's the class war, stupid. Yeah. It's a play off of the economy, stupid. But I've been just trying to push as much as possible that it's a class war. It's the 99% versus the 1%, and we need to come together as the 99% in solidarity, radical solidarity, if needed, to work together so that we can make a change in this country. And that's a great segue into the sneak peek. The Mutual Aid Political Party. This is an idea that I have to give credit to Revolutionary Blackout Network. They always harped on mutual aid. And now I don't know if I've ever heard of it before getting introduced to RBN, but they definitely harped on it so much that I read a book on mutual aid with, I think David Spade. Don't quote me, but I looked more into mutual aid, and I thought that it would be a great tool for a greater systemic change. So the idea is this website, when we launch very soon, is going to be a ticketing system for neighbors to help neighbors, towns to help towns, organizations to help organizations. And basically, you will come to the website, click on the dashboard, boom. Here's one ticket. This is a test ticket made by some person in Case Study QB. See the logo there? So you'll be able to click on the ticket. It says, mow lawn. I need help cutting my grass because my lawnmower is broke. Now, you don't even have to put why. You could just put that you need help. And then you'll be able to put where it is, the location. And then not publicly is going to have the address, but when you do get a member to apply to help you, you'll be able to, multiple members can apply to help, and then you could pick who you want to help you. You could click. So here, it was already accepted. So this other person here clicked and they accepted it. And then boom, you guys will be able to communicate directly on how to get to the location, the date, the time, and all that good stuff. So I'm just going to show you how to create a ticket. Click on create ticket. You type in the title. Boom. Boom. Just going real quick. Put the date. Hit submit. And then boom, it pops up and it goes right in there in the bucket. So now somebody else can click on there and they can apply to help. Now, here's some other powerful parts of the website. We're going to have this My Government section. And then let's say, Day, you have that zip code you want to give me?
Yes.
So this is going to be for you, the user, to put in your own zip code here. And go ahead when you have it, Day. You just go 223?
No, 23173.
23173.
173.
So right now, some places you need to put more than just a zip code. But you could try just a zip code. If it doesn't work, you have to put your address. Now, as of right now, we're not saving your address, so you don't worry about that. But you hit enter, and then it's going to give you all your elected representatives. So here you have President of the United States, Vice President, the Senator, both senators, your governor, lieutenant governor, etc. Now, what's going to be coming in the future? When we first launch, it's going to have limited features, just the basics, creating a ticket, answering tickets. But we're going to be slowly building out as this project continues. And the vision for this page, My Government, is you're going to be able to put in your address, and then you're going to be able to nominate people in your community for the different positions here. And that's how we're going to be able to find people. So, for example, somebody helped me out with mowing my lawn, and then the idea is to build communication with the person, to continue a relationship with them. And you might find, wow, this person is very articulate, very smart, knows a lot. I trust this person. He could be school board member. He or she could be the school board chancellor, or I could elect them to be mayor of my town. I'm going to nominate him. And then once we build community in a specific town, and that person will see that they got 5 nominations, and say, maybe I'll go ahead and run for that office. And let's see if the mutual aid political party or the organization can help push that person to get elected. All right. The last part of this, before I go to the panel, if they have any questions, this is the teams aspect. So here I just put as an example, mutual aid of Plainfield, New Jersey, where you'll be able to click on it, boom. And here you have your own page with your profile, your about profile. It's going to have your members there. And then in the future, you're going to have events. But you almost think of it like this will be like a social media organization or website. Think of it like Twitter. You see how Twitter, you see the avatar here, and then the banner will be in the background. And then hopefully you will be promoting, hey, my organization's website is mutualaidparty.org/team/KC Tenants, or Revolutionary Blackout of Boston. Like if you guys start to have chapters, this could be something that can be utilized for an example. And by creating tickets, helping each other, mutual aid. Now I want to put emphasis, this is not charity. So it's not for one person to just be out there helping all the time. We want you as well, even though it's nice that you're a person that want to do a lot of help to other people, we want you to also ask for help. All right, so I think I talked enough. I'm already 7 minutes over. I'm gonna first go to Sabby, who was graceful enough to grace her presence, coming on the show again. I just want to thank you, Sabby Sabs, for taking your time out, for coming on the show. Do you have any questions about what you saw so far?
I don't. I think this looks great, Case.
Cool. So this is just the beginning. Things are going to be changing here and there. Anyone else have any questions?
Is there a way for people to be able to like either sign up for information about it, or like a launch, or where they can maybe go yet?
Yes. So I'm going to be doing a soft launch. I'm going to work with Sabby. I already promised that the community that she built on Calling is a great community. So I'm going to let them be the first to I'm going to share the website. They're going to be able to kick the tires on this thing and see what we find. And I'll be able to get feedback from them. So, and then after they kick the tires and I see any issues, any problems, we're going to do a wider launch in the future. Now, the goal was already to have this, to kick the tires on this by the end of February, but something as simple as how to add the avatar picture, it took me like 2 weeks just to figure that out. I'm doing this on my own, trying to program and do my thing. So I love that everyone had patience. That's why I used to go on Sabby's call-ins very frequently, And the last like maybe a week or two, I think you noticed I wasn't there because I was like, I'm not showing my face again until I get this thing done. So that's what I've been trying to really knock that out. But I'm happy to say that we're really, really, really close to launching. All right.
But just one thing on your teams tab, I do think you should try to build a timeline of sorts.
Okay. What you mean a timeline?
Where like if you go back to it, it doesn't seem like you have like a place where people can, like the owner of the team group can put like information down. You just have profile members and then upcoming events. So no like page where you can go to where you can see information very quickly that's recent.
Okay. So I think profile, that's what is going to be under. Do you mean like a website for that particular team or email or something?
No, it's similar to the way if you go to like an organization's Twitter, right? You're seeing their timeline and their most recent things of like what they're saying about this topic or what they're saying about this other topic. I'm not saying you have to copy the Twitter.
Kimberly, I'm going to talk to you on the side just because I want to respect Sabrina's time and end the show. But we're going to connect and you're going to show me what you're talking about. And we'll see if that's something that could be implemented. Thank you for that feedback, though. Thank you, Sabs, for coming on the show. Let me remove this.
Thanks.
And let me just say shout out to everybody in the chat. Usually I like to go through again, but we're way over time. I want to give some love to David, Kimberly, Sabrina. Sabrina, can you let everybody know where they can find you and any information?
Sure, you can find me on YouTube. My channel is Sabby Sabs, or you can find me on Revolutionary Blackout Network, also on YouTube. And you can find me on Twitter at Sabby Sabs 2, the number 2.
All right. Thank you. Day, any last words?
No, thank you all.
See you later, Sabrina.
Bye.
Have a good one.
We've launched our first podcast episode, so call me Limbo Pod on wherever you get your podcast and on Twitter and TikTok. So yeah, check out the first episode and intro episode now.
All right, David.
Yes, I've really started to think and believe that the system, our current system, isn't going to change until all of us start to utilize it the way that the billionaires do. And so I am really encouraged that, like in the state of Colorado, like LLC filings and new business filings were up pretty dramatically. And you can also listen to some ideas about how to work within the system to change the system at Call Me Limbo Pod. Yes, so thanks for having us, Case.
Yes, I'm looking forward to y'all doing big things. Kimberly. What's up, buddy?
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for having me on as always. So, I mean, I don't have much to add. I mean, I do have a Twitter, but it's just like K DeCoupe, which is my last name. And most people don't know how to spell it. So.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming through. Bryce Smith, Angela Sangster, Kat Terrell, Cheryl Patrick, Paul Patrick, Gemon, Roger Meadows, thanks for the super chats. And everybody, much love to y'all. MutualAidParty.org coming soon. We're going to be doing some big things. We're going to be doing some unconventional systemic changes really soon. Grassroots movement. Much love to y'all. Have a good one. Peace. Y'all can hear the music?
Yeah.
Oh, that's something new.
I know. I was like, I don't remember this before. This is dope. Oh, we're still live. But